In 2019, YouTube was caught violating the Child Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPPA. Since settling, YouTube has enacted new policies that are meant to serve as a smokescreen so they can dodge responsibility and scapegoat creators. As such, for my own protection, it is my obligation to advise you that this video is not aimed at children. My target audience is not children. Parental discretion is advised. Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. Today we are beginning our look at the Master Trilogy with the first story, And You Will Obey Me, released in April of 2016, written by Alan Barnes, directed by Jamie Anderson. And You Will Obey Me stars Peter Daivson as the Fifth Doctor and Geoffrey Beevers as the Decaying Master. As always, I will be talking about spoilers, as always, I do these unscripted, so just in case, there is a blanket spoiler warning in place. If you do not want to be spoiled, in the description box below will be the link to Big Finish's website, where you can buy And You Will Obey Me. And this is a tough one to talk about. When I first heard the Master Trilogy, this was the hardest one to get through. Because, when I tried to listen to it, I did 4 or 5 false starts before I could really get into the story. I listened to it, and at some point I'd go I think I missed something, or I'm just not invested, and I'd have to start over to try and get invested again. Which, that's kind of one of my big things with And You Will Obey Me. Episode 1 is the weakest episode in the entire story, and it's the hardest to get through. But once you get through it, the rest of the story is really rewarding. It's really engaging. It's really good. But yeah, episode 1, man, because even the mystery the story is setting up, while you get the little hints of it, it doesn't really start picking up until episode 2. So what is the mystery here? What is the story? Well, the Fifth Doctor shows up at an auction house where a grandfather clock is being sold. If you are familiar with the Geoffrey Beevers Master at all, this grandfather clock is the Master's TARDIS. The Doctor had received a distress call saying that the TARDIS had been abandoned and he needed to pick it up. Problem is, the Doctor's not the only one interested in the clock. There are various other characters throughout interested in the clock as well. There are these teenagers named, give me a minute, as I was prepping for this, I always forgot the kids' names. There's Colin, Helen, Janine, and Mikey. I'll expand on them in a little bit, but basically, right now, Colin and Helen are also trying to get the clock, and the Doctor meets a third person, a woman named Annie, also trying to get the clock. And so throughout the auction ends, the Doctor loses, so he tries to find other ways to get the clock, because the Doctor does not know what the Master is up to, what he's planning, or if he's even planning something. But obviously, because it's the Master, he needs to get to the bottom of this. And Peter Davison, his performance throughout this story is really uneven, I found. In the first half of the story, he sounds kind of dull, but as the story picks up and as the mystery picks up, of course, he becomes more invested, and his performance becomes better as we get closer and closer to the end of the story. One other thing too, because I'll talk about Geoffrey Beevers in a little bit, but he is barely in this story. But that is used to great effect. He doesn't really show up physically until episode 4 and kind of episode 3, which I'll have to talk about episode 3 on its own. But yeah, but again, the story uses his lack of presence to great effect, because there's this ominousness to the story. There's this buildup as the events of this mystery unfold. You're starting to ask yourself, what did the Master do? And when we finally get the answer, the payoff is so rewarding because the tension was built up so well. If there is one thing I would complain about, there's too much going on. Like I said, you have the Doctor trying to get the Master's TARDIS with his sort of one-off companion, but not really Annie. You have the kids who, the four kids, Janine, Helen, Mikey, and Colin, who are all linked to the Master. And then the Doctor also mentions that there are assassins hunting the Master, and that's like one step too far. For example, one of the ones we meet are called dragon hunters, which are basically just giant alien dragonflies. And they are so superfluous to the story. Like, they have no bearing or effect on the story at all. Like, they show up, and they show up in episode 1. They make themselves known in episode 2. In the same episode, the Doctor gets rid of them very, very easily. And then they don't show up again until episode 4. Where again, they are dispatched really easily. They were so superfluous to this story. They just feel tacked on, and it feels like padding. It feels like as this was being planned out, someone said the story's not long enough, and Barnes was like, okay, I have an idea. But yeah, no, they were so unnecessary. Geoffrey Beevers, though, for what little time he has, he's really great, and that's in particular where episode 3 shines, because episode 3 is pretty much just the backstory of these 4 kids and the Master and what he did. Basically back in the 80s, he came across them and he influenced them to do his bidding. Because this title is a play on the Master's catchphrase, I am the Master and you will obey me. Which he utters when he hypnotizes people. And the way he preys on these kids, it's disturbing. He promises them their heart's desires, obviously lying, if they do his bidding for them. He makes them do things, okay, like they steal supplies for him, and at one point he makes these kids kill a man. And just the way it plays out, the way the scene plays out, especially with one of them in particular, Mikey, it's disturbing, it's uneasy, and it is played to incredible effect. Just plain and simple, episode 3 is the best part of the story. And, of course, in episode 4, we get the payoff to what's happened. When the Master's original plan was stopped, he preserved his consciousness in his TARDIS, which he then uses to possess one of these kids to escape. And I will say, the conclusion of this story is, it's the power of love thing, essentially. Kinda, not really. It's the quickest way to explain it. They use that to overpower and defeat the Master. But unlike, say, Closing Time, here, it actually works, because there was this whole setup with one of the characters, with one of the children, Mikey. All of the children, by the way, are really good. I keep saying children, they were technically teenagers when this happened, but yeah, no, they were all really good. Janine, I think Mikey might have been my favorite just because of his own backstory. He had a brother who was in the Falklands during the war, and it changed him, and Mikey saw how it changed him, and that's what he used to resist the Master's control. And I'd say Colin is probably the weakest, but all of the actors put in really good performances, and the characters themselves are compelling enough. And like I said, it's them banding together to defeat the Master, which again, in this instance, unlike some other instances, again, Closing Time, where it really works. We also get a little bit, there is a little bit hinting at what the greater arc of the trilogy is. For example, with the Dragon Hunters and Annie, ultimately, it's revealed she's actually a robot assassin sent after the Master. The Doctor asked who put the price on the Master's head, which will also lead into the mystery of throughout this trilogy, because there is something going on with the Master, which I can't talk about right now. But, and Geoffrey Beevers, this Master knows what it is. Also, the rapport between Peter Davison and Geoffrey Beevers is really good. It's a pairing I wish we got more of, but unfortunately, I don't think it's one we're ever gonna get again because of the two masters, the final story in this trilogy. Oh well. And You Will Obey Me is okay. It's a decent start to this trilogy. It's got a very painfully slow start, but once you get past that, it builds up really well. Peter Davison is good. Geoffrey Beevers is phenomenal as always. The side characters are very fleshed out and really well developed, and it's ultimately really satisfying. And it's done in a way that if you were curious, you could check out the story on its own. I'm going to give And You Will Obey Me a 7 out of 10. But those were just my thoughts on And You Will Obey Me. What were yours? Join me next week when we will continue the Master Trilogy with a different Doctor and a different Master in Vampire of the Mind. And that's it. What did you think? Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload. In the description box below, you'll find the link to my Twitter where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and I'll see you guys next time.